that David Weber is a political science professor and writer at the University of Missouri. He's lived in Columbia since 1986 and has volunteered at a local homeless shelter since 2010 and also volunteered at a local soup kitchen since 2015. In addition to his academic publications, he's written 2 long plays and 2 short plays about homelessness, and 1 play called Practicing Democracy, about democracy and generations that have been performed in Columbia. I wish I'd seen it. He's an op-ed. I think most of us know David from being an op-ed columnist for the Columbia Missourian, where he regularly writes social issues, public policies, and politics. And I know, David, that I forward your articles about the mayoral race and accident where happened probably 20 times to people, including to candidates. So thank you for that article. Thank you for being here today, David.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the invitation. I talked mostly to Wiley Miller, and I wish he had been here today. I understand his wife is taken ill. Hope she's doing okay. I do have I'm not very good at this Zoom stuff, but I have a screen to share, so I'll try. I don't know if I'm approved or not, but I'll see what I'm supposed to do here.
You are. Just click screen sharing. It ought to work.
Well, I got too much stuff in front of me, though. Can you see that?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
we can.
Yes.
So let me just give a quick overview, and then I'll go back and talk about some specific things. But I'm most interested in people's reactions, like, and I get a little nervous, like talking around like David Leuthold and people like that who probably know more about all this than I do. But I welcome his comments as well. So my 2 simple ideas, and I'm not sure if let's see. Can I scroll this? I guess I can. So my 2 simple ideas that I'll come back to are universal voting and ranked choice voting. Okay. But my column that I just sent in this morning, so you can read later today, I embed these 2 ideas with some other things. So let me just give you a taste of this, and then I'll go back to those 2 key ideas. Okay. So I'm arguing that, Missouri is the center of the US, Columbia is the center of Missouri, campus is the center of Columbia, I'm the center of campus, So you get my point here that we should take the lead, right? And we could have much more influence in the state, I believe, than we think we can. So one thing I want to do is encourage voting. And I understand that it's state law that affects election law, right? But there are some things we can do, and perhaps I'll come back to that. Second is adopt ranked choice voting. And as a charter city, we can do this ourselves. So I know some people in the council are aware of this, and I hope that they promote it. And then third is I believe we should establish what I call a credible quarterly community survey. And I think we could, I have a plan for doing this too. And I'll come back to that. I think we need to improve how we present government to people. So for example, the city council meetings are mostly, I would call them a shambles. It's chaos. One doesn't get the impression that many people know what they're supposed to be doing. But that's a whole nother speech for some other day. And then fifth, I propose that we establish a broad-based citizen forum. Okay, and remember that, you know, here we are in what, 2022, I guess it is, right? And journalism has, not disappeared, but it is sort of, do all know routine city hall reporters. So there's less filtered information that's being provided. There's lots of reasons people are into other things. Bowling alone, right? That book is 30 years old. The decline of participation in civic organizations. So we find ourselves in I think I'm not gonna say a dangerous place, but a place that does not give me much comfort. I'll put it to you that way. Again, for lots of reasons. Okay. So the two ideas that I want to talk mostly about, and I do have this book that Pam also has, are universal voting and ranked choice voting. And why I call these simple ideas is that the only idea I want to promote about universal voting is we should think of it differently. We should think of it as similar to jury duty, right? It's a citizen activity. So it should not be a privilege that can be taken away by political strategists and other people. I think it would change citizens. It would, I believe, if you vote, you have to go to a polling place, you bump into other people there voting, you often stop and talk to them. You would probably pay more attention to the campaign before you cast a vote. Okay, so that it would change citizens, and I think that's good. Secondly, it would undoubtedly change politicians. Okay, that they are aware that everyone's voting, and they wouldn't focus on the base so much. And third, it would change political strategy. Again, so it wouldn't be prudent to try to squeeze people out or whatever. It would, you would have to consider them as potential voters. Okay. And as Pam and some other people, some of the other Davids mentioned before we got started here, Australia has had universal compulsory voting for 100 years, and the turnout now is up in the 80s. Some countries like South Korea hit 80% without really compulsory voting, but by civic persuasion, I guess you would call it. And as most of us know, the voting turnout in the US has been low historically. And there's reasons for that. It's on a Tuesday, you know, the hours aren't very long actually compared to other countries. I mean, so there's a lot of small things we could do too. Then people, I mean, often people ask, well, is this the same as compulsory voting? Would you throw people in jail if they didn't vote? And I would say, well, what do we do if people are not on jury duty or do not show up for jury duty? Well, we send them a postcard and say, we missed you. We're going to keep you in the pool, right? But if you have a good excuse, you can get out of jury duty, right? I mean, even if you're not feeling well or if your job prevents you, right? So what E.J. Dion suggests is that we would send you a postcard. The county clerk would say, you know, we noticed that you didn't vote. Which are the following reasons? And you'd have to give a reason. And it could be that you were working, you were sick or whatever. And the fines would be very slight, or maybe just community service. So I don't think we would expect mass incarceration for people who don't vote. So ranked choice voting, the first time I was exposed to this was graduate school, 1975. You know, so this idea has been around a long time. And I like to talk to strangers about these ideas or whatever. And very often people say, well, in small groups, this is what we do all the time, right? I mean, if you're in a, I'm from a family of 8 children, so I was brought up this way, you know, like where do we want to go for vacation? Where do we want to go for with dessert? And we even voted on my baby brother, the number 8's name. And his name is John. He was born in 61, 3 days after Kennedy was inaugurated. So that was an easy vote, right? But we had other names, right? We just didn't have to pick one. We had we could rank them, right? And I think most people think that collective choice is more than just picking one, okay? I'm pretty much, I believe I'm a moderate on most issues, okay? And I'm willing to accept public preferences most of the time. I have some exceptions, but so I'm willing to go with collective judgments that are thought out and that are orderly decided, okay? But the problem is that the voting system doesn't allow us to do that very often. So I think everyone on this Zoom recalls 1992, right? And you might remember that the Democrat Clinton won with 42% of the vote. Bush 41 got 37%. And do you remember Ross Perot? Got 18%. So what ranked choice voting would have done would be to have removed Mr. Perot and gone to his voters' second choice. And that would have been Bush or Clinton. As Luther knows, political scientists don't agree on very much. I have researched this. It says the consensus is that Bush would have won, but exit surveys were evenly divided on how people would have cast their second vote. So I'm not sure, but you see how ranked choice voting would have worked, right? That Perot would have been eliminated, and those votes would have been the second preferences would have been assigned to either Clinton or Bush. Now I know. I've heard 2 major misunderstandings, which I've tried to alert Scott Charlton. Some of you may know that name. One of my neighbors mentioned to me that she thought that there would have to be a new election. So in 92, that we would have a runoff after Perot is eliminated. So that if you had like 6 candidates, you would have 5 elections and it would take a long time. So I think that is a misconception, okay? Then I remember, and I mentioned this in a column that Alice Turner kindly mentioned. I remember Henry Lane, remember him? So his idea was instant runoff voting, IRV. So Earth Day, like 2002 maybe, he had a table down there where he had people go through this pencil exercise. He demonstrated how instant runoff voting, which we now call ranked choice voting, would work. So this idea has been around. It's been tried. It's not New York City last, I guess last fall maybe, at the most recent mayoral election, used ranked choice voting. Maine and Alaska use it. They will use it for the congressional race in Alaska that you may know, Sarah Palin, you may recall her. She's a candidate. And there are 50 candidates for the Alaska House. And the primary will result in the top 4 going to the second round, which will be ranked choice. So it would be like my example of the 1992 election. So the reason I favor this is I think it would increase the number of candidates. and I'm all for that, okay? And it will reduce what political scientists call strategic voting, which is what I think happened last Tuesday here in Columbia, okay? And I don't have a good survey to support this, but I have had at least 10 people tell me that they changed the vote from Tanya Heath and David Seaman, okay, that once they didn't think they were going to win, so they chose to vote for Barbara Buffalo, okay. But I don't have, all I have is people who have mentioned that to me. But that is what we call strategic voting. That's not good. I would have rather people rank Seaman, Buffalo, Heath, or whatever, and then the voting results would have shown that, you know, the true preferences of Colombians. But the voting process did not allow us to do that. So it became strategic to vote for your second preference. For some people, and I do a lot of people, it was for first preference. I understand that. So that's the basic idea of ranked choice voting. There is a group called, I think, Better Elections that's here in Missouri that's gathering petition signatures for a initiative vote. I've not seen any evidence of it in Colombia. They're on the internet, and I send them my email address, but I don't think I've received anything from them, so I don't know how credible they are. So again, if we take these two ideas and try to apply them to Colombia, okay, I think we can encourage voting. We can have more voting. And one idea that I thought of on my own, I don't know if it's original or not. So every November or early December, we get a statement from the county assessor, you know, for the evaluation confirmation for personal and property tax. So, you know, we could put a flyer in there. We could, you know, with modern information technology, we could actually inform people that they are not registered to vote. We appreciate them paying taxes, but citizen responsibility is more than just paying taxes. So that's one idea that I hope to pass to the county commission. They would have jurisdiction over that. And then, as I mentioned, and if you go to Article 16, Section 120 of the county code, the county charter, the city charter, which, and I'll have a link in my article on in the Missourian. It says that the council has responsibility for the conduct of municipal elections, and the county clerk and someone else, I forget who, I forget, someone else acknowledged. Oh, I know that St. Louis adopted approval voting because they are a charter city as well. Should I mention? Should I talk about these other ideas, or should we open it up for discussion of those two, of voting and ranked choice? Ranked choice voting.
Pam Springsdale has raised her hand. Pam, do you have a point or a comment on what he said?
I have a question. I understand that ranked choice voting would make it so that you wouldn't have such far left and far right candidates. It would be more, you would end up with more moderate candidates. And I don't quite understand how that works. I would like that explained.
Well, so if you favored one of those people you described as non-moderate, you would rank them number one, and then probably a more moderate candidate would be number two. But when the votes are counted, that extremist candidate would probably not stay in the running because they were too extreme. So then your second preference would, perhaps more moderate, would be gain your vote. So the vote total would increase. So it's likely that a moderate would be elected.
Okay.
So in the case of the 1992 election, most people would think that Perot was somehow more extremist on the budget, I remember, right? Wasn't that his big, one of his big
Yes.
issues? So he would have dropped out probably because he would not have gotten more votes than Bush or Clinton. Does that answer your question, Pam?
Yes, it does. Now, you think it is best to start this at the local level as well as the universal voting?
Well, we can do something about it here at the local level, right? I mean, we could, I think it just takes the vote of the city council to adopt it into the city charter. So we could establish ranked choice voting with 4 votes. But it could also be done at the state level, right? There's not much, I guess the federal government could encourage it or give money, right? I mean, carrot and stick approach, but most election law is state law.
I would like for you to go over what it says in the book, that the previous things that you need to have to make it more universal voting, like making the voting day a holiday, etc. All these things that would make it easier to vote.
Same day registration, no excuse absentee voting, right? That you could just postcard voting, email voting. We need to be concerned about election integrity. I understand that, but most of us probably believe that can be used to discourage voting too. So my aim is to increase voter participation. Professor Luthold?
Yes, I have a question. With regard to getting more people to vote, I tried to make an analysis at one time, and I found that in many of the countries that have high voting turnout, that voters are only asked to make one choice per year. Whereas in Boone County, when I was checking it, it came out to about 35 choices per year between the primary and general elections and the municipal elections, and also all of the constitutional amendments and tax issues on the ballot, that sort of thing. And I think that's one of the things that discourages people from voting. Would the non-voters find it sort of overwhelming to vote on so many issues with which they're unfamiliar?
Yeah, well, I tend to look for simple explanations, I guess. And I remember back in the progressive era, there was a move towards the long ballot, right? And wasn't that to reduce the influence of political parties? And I think that's how we got so many elected offices. And I think we need to stop and think about that. But I think that is a problem. I'm just amazed at how many people don't understand what we call federalism, right? That they really don't know what's the difference between federal, state, and local government. And so they have no idea that, you know, the county clerk works for the county. And I think we need to address that. I mean, we either need to reduce that or accept, you know, that leaders need to be more in the citizen education business, which I think we need to do. And I think part of my criticism of the city council when they're on television is that they are talking among themselves to make a decision, but it looks pretty bad to a person watching it on TV. I mean, it looks chaotic. It's confusing. But I'm surprised. I just met a guy about 2 weeks ago who told me he was 84, David. So he was young. I know. But he told me I could. He wanted me to write a column. Like I wrote that column saying that I'm no Hank Waters, so don't look for any endorsements here. And he said that he wanted me to endorse people. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm not suitable. But he wanted me. Some people have told me that before. That if I would just tell them how to vote, they would vote that way. I go, oh no, I don't know enough.
Let me note also, that's an interesting idea to include a flyer saying, be sure to register to vote with the tax statements. But in Colombia, my understanding is that about half the people are living in apartments in Colombia. And I assume that in most of those cases, the owner is paying the taxes. And so I would suspect that most of the people who would get the notice are probably already registered to vote, and most of the people who are not registered would not get the notice.
Yeah, that's true. That can be reduced a bit by including the personal property tax. So the first, I teach in the Asian Affairs Center. All of these people know about the county assessor, and that surprised me. And I said, how do you know? Most American citizens don't know that. And they say, well, because when I bought a car, I had to start to pay taxes. And because of our insufficient transportation system, many of the guests to the university have to buy cars in order to survive here. But that's an issue, and I'm sure it skews towards, upper class or, higher income people. But I would, I would do the same for food stamps, right? Food stamp recipients should be reminded to vote. I'm for universal voting, including people in prisons. So they are right there. We would have to decide where should the vote count. What is the residence? Okay, and we haven't addressed that very well either in the U.S.
Yeah, in the 1990s, we did pass that motor voter procedure, which in essence required that when people are asking for their driver's license, that they get the opportunity to register to vote. And I don't know how much impact that had.
I don't either, but that's a good point. Anyone else? With David?
Yes, I've got a question concerning universal voting. Again, it's still a fairly new concept for me. I understand that the Boone County Clerk, I guess statewide, we have calendared up to 6 elections a year. We don't use most of them, but in case there's a special election. So conceivably, we could have 6 votes a year for different things, primary and general and those kind of things. So if we would do universal voting, would you be in favor of only doing universal voting for the one federal, or are you talking about all 6 or some combination thereof?
I think it's most likely that it would have to be adopted at the state level, right? So, and that would include all 6, right? I mean, including the presidential primary, right? Which comes in February or March sometimes. But yeah, I mean, philosophically, I would be in favor of it at all of them. And in fact, I think our vote is probably more powerful at the local level, but most citizens don't see it that way, right? I mean, if we lived in a 3rd ward, we could have decided that election, right? If we had voted there, but I don't live there, Yes, yeah, go on.
I do have another question then concerning that universal voting. I assume you studied this from both sides. Could you share what are some of the drawbacks to universal voting? Why not do it?
I think the biggest one you hear is that somehow these would be inferior, poorly prepared voters, right? That they don't know what's going on. So they will be less informed than other people. But I guess I don't think most people are that informed, really. That's the biggest one. And then political strategists, I don't think like the idea of having all voters, right? They would rather focus on likely voters and on the base and try to target groups that are able to be converted, right? Change their minds. So they would like to have more control. I only see 3 screens, 3 people, so I don't know if anyone else has a question. Any hands up?
If anyone has a question, if you'll use the reactions button and click raise hand, it will bring you to the top, I think, at least it will on mine. So let's see.
Well, if not, let me talk about these 3 other ways to improve Columbia, governance. Okay, so one, see if I can move this down here. So some of you may recall, I did a couple of surveys, which I published in the Missourian, using what's called Survey Monkey. It's an internet survey, okay? But so it depends on your email lists and your social media contacts, right? So I tried very hard. I mean, I contacted people I knew in the 1st ward, in the 3rd ward, and I got some lists that way. But I still I can't tell you that it was a representative survey. It looked pretty good. So I gave myself a B or a B+. Okay, but certainly I wouldn't have given myself an A for the credibility, for the representativeness and credibility of the survey. Okay, but it's very low cost. So as you may know, every 2 years, the city of Columbia does a very high quality survey, and it's on the website. It's probably, the report's probably 200 pages. So, but they do it every 2 years. So I don't think that that's very useful. So like roll cards. I would honestly like to know, well, what's the true public opinion about roll cards or wearing face masks, to go back a year. So I didn't do a survey about the election. I would have liked to have done a survey, but I didn't. Oh, I don't want to influence the outcome if I'm not sure of my work. But I think this can be done, and it could be done at minimal cost using SurveyMonkey and the internet. But what I would need to do it is like a small board to involved that would give someone email contacts and social media contacts, and they would make sure that it's unbiased and that it's credible. So in the school, the journalism school and KOMU could be those people that would become involved in that. And then let me go to my fifth one. So a citizen forum or a local think tank. So 30 years ago, there were just a load. I mean, I remember when I came to Mizzou in 1986, Governor Ashcroft had something called the Missouri Opportunity 2000 Commission, right? And they had like 55. That's how I met Muriel Battle, actually, because she was on it. They had 55 specific recommendations about the future of Missouri and how public policy needed to be prepared to address future issues. I don't think there's anyone in Columbia that does that sort of information gathering, commenting on existing policies, and sort of preparing us for the future. And if I could, I don't want to shock anybody here, but I have one one action that people should think about. And I've suggested this to like, 4 people I can think of, and they just froze, okay? So that is, what would happen if Veterans United was bought up by someone with a lot more, that gave the couple that owns it a handsome return, and they chose to move to St. Louis? What would happen with all this space that Veterans United now uses? So it's issues like that that I think someone needs to put out there and think strategically about. And I got some ideas for how to proceed on this, but everything takes too long for me. I'm not a very patient person. And then I do hope that the new city council, the new formulated city council, does, and I think they are, think about how they are projected through online streaming and television to outside of the city chambers, because I think that does affect people's perception of the competence. Any suggestions for things I could add to my list or write about next time that would improve Columbia governance? What else do we need to do? Yeah.
See, David, I would like you to write about your suggestions for the city council. I think that would be informative and thought-provoking for those of us coming, out of that tight mayoral election. And I think our new mayor would be interested to hear that too.
And I hope other people talk to her and, and make suggestions to her too.
David, one of the things that you've really been interested in is the homeless.
Yeah.
And the city apparently is considering some options there. But from what I've been reading, it's a little hard for me to know what options are being considered and what is the what would be the effect of those options.
Yeah.
You might write on that, or at least what your understanding is of the options and what the likelihood is that the city will, in fact, spend some of this money in that direction.
Yeah. Well, what there's 25 million of ARPA money, the American Rescue Plan Act, that is still not spoken for or not expended, I should say. And And some of that, I think, will go towards what people talked about a year ago, Opportunity Campus, which, but I think most of the action, I think, in Columbia on this has been along more about affordable housing, right? The Columbia Housing Authority has a plan for all the space over by Oak Towers that has been empty for years. So they do have a plan to build public housing there and to revitalize or to refurbish, I guess. A lot of the housing stock, public housing is like 1967. But again, I'm all for refurbishing things. You know, the waiting list for public housing, yeah, I think it's close to 1,000. And I don't think anybody really does have a plan, to be honest with you. People talk, I mean, about needs and, but I don't think anyone does have a plan. Which is disturbing because I've been around this for like, at least 7 years that I've known her. But I'm going to teach a course for the Honors College in the fall on homelessness in the US. And the major reason I want to do that is so I focus my attention for like 3 months on that issue because it's one of many things that I follow and I have to focus more. You know? David?
I believe Mr. Caldwell, Winnie Caldwell, did you have your hand up? Oh,
Yes, I do. I'm
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
sorry I don't have one of those fancy yellow hands on my computer.
Oh,
I just wanted to second David Weber's comment about the website of the Columbia. I ended up this morning finally going to Google and getting, asking my question and finally getting it there about Columbia,
Oh,
because there's not a general search mechanism that works. I wanted to find out about, interesting because Sharon brought up this issue about the climate policy. And Columbia does have a plan, the Columbia Climate Action and Adaptation Plan with goals and strategies and objectives and everything. But it was not easy to find, and it wasn't easy to find boards and commissions. I wanted to find out who was on the commission for the Climate and Environment Commission. And it took me circling around in different ways to finally get the information. So I think that's because of the importance of the climate crisis. That should be front and center on the computer, on the city's website. We have strategies and steps to get there, and I want to see a report on the progress, and could not locate anything more recent than 2020.
yeah. I refrained from speaking about this before the election, but I guess Barbara Buffalo and Randy Minchow got in an argument about homelessness, and Barbara sort of said that Randy was naive and he needs to look at these government reports. And I looked at them and I was shocked. I think it was 2017, the county health department, the point in time count is what it's called. And it was dated. I was surprised. And I mean, I can appreciate that it's easier to put stuff up the first time than it is to maintain it. But I think credibility is at risk, is involved. And I don't know if there's a chief internet officer or something. I don't know how to make a positive contribution about that. Anything else? If not,
Let me just add in terms of the homeless work that's being done in Columbia, there is an active group headed by the Voluntary Action Center that has assigned a staff person to this to work on proposing what they're calling the Opportunity Campus, which that particular name, I don't find that real helpful, but that's what they're talking about. And they're looking at building a homeless shelter and using some of the ARPA funds for that. So this discussion is a way, and I think the wider community needs to know about that and what is being considered.
yeah, yes, you're right. I'm aware of that, and I think Randy Cole has played a big part in that and has a proposal that is coming out of that. Again, more about affordable housing than homeless on the street. And I think that, Room at the Inn has done, in my view, a heroic job for what they've had, right? I mean, it's a voluntary organization going around between these churches every year, and I've been very involved in that. But it's not, it needs to be improved, it needs to be sustained. And I don't know how anyone, it's like we're gonna have this big opportunity center, probably 2 or 3 or 4 years in the future, but we don't know what we're gonna do next year, next winter.
All right, do we have any other questions or comments there? Pam Springsteel, go ahead, Pam.
I just wanted to comment. I thought I read in the paper that they were really happy having it at the former fairgrounds. And could they not do that again?
I'm of mixed mind about that. I mean, I volunteered out there a couple of nights, and it was certainly nice to have the space, right? I'm a little worried about the putting it out there so far, sort of out of sight, out of mind. But I guess I could be convinced. Someone told me, and I've not checked this out, that it's the same amount of time from Wilkes to Fairview Methodist as it is from Wilkes to the fairgrounds. So I'm going to drive that to see whether that's true. It just seems a lot farther to me, but I don't go out that way. That may be a good decision, right? I mean, it'd be permanent. It'd be, they won't have to do the transitions every 2 to 3 weeks, which is very hard, I know. But I am concerned that it'll just be a dumping, just to hide away. I don't know.
All right, any other question or comments for our speaker?
David, is there some place that has solved their homeless problem?
No.
That's what I thought.
And it's gonna get worse. And it's all about coping, right? And Luther told me this about 10 years ago, right, David, that it used to take you and your father and your brother like 10 days to put up 100 feet of fence. And now 2 people can do it in an hour, right? That there was a lot of technological displacement, right? These people used to shovel snow, deliver the paper, do handyman stuff. And those jobs are all gone, right? And then if you throw in, some health problems, some drug abuse, it gets very big awfully quick. And when I've confided in some people that, we want to do a good job. We don't want to do a great job because it's going to attract. I-70 goes through the middle of our city, right? So I'm amazed the number of people who think that I'm, callous and uncaring for making that statement, but that's the truth. Everyone has a cell phone.
They'll all come.
Yeah, so I think we need to all do better. All these organizations people belong to need to do 20% better And that may be the best we can do. And
Mhm.
it I don't know, it disturbs me, it concerns me, it upsets me or whatever, but I don't know what the best thing, I mean.
All right, we've got about 5 minutes left, enough time for one or two more comments. Kathy, you got something?
I was just going to read what Dave Taylor put in the chat, and that was a quote from David Seaman, that to eliminate crime, we're going to have to eliminate poverty. He listed that as the quote of the month.
Well, yep. 50 years ago, I learned about the cycle of poverty, right? Life hasn't changed that much. It's only sped up, I think. That's true. I mean, I think, I guess I would, it's poverty, but it's also social engagement, right? That kids in school need to be more engaged in extracurricular activities. They need to play basketball and soccer or whatever. They need to be engaged in good things, right? And I don't think that American society has kept up with that very well.
I also think that we have to remember about the inequality of wealth that exists in the United States. We're the leading country for that. When I look at the Ukrainians leaving their home, they lived in this 3-room house for their whole life, and they're leaving what little wealth they have behind if they're able to flee for their lives. So I always like to repeat to people, and it's really coming out since it's the tax season, the inequality of wealth in our country could solve a lot of problems. And if Biden's proposal would have all had any traction, that would have helped.
Yeah. Oh, I would agree. And if you have a job with health benefits, you're probably doing okay, right? But if there's people working 2 or 3 jobs at minimum wage or below, and they are not, and the kids are in trouble. Yeah, no, I agree. But I don't, why do we tolerate that?
Absolutely.
Because we're too busy, or we, I don't know, we forget, or I don't know.
Right.
It's disturbing. I'd rather think about like ranked choice voting than I would rather think about the homeless, to be honest with you.
It's the way our tax system is set up. It's designed to make the wealthy wealthier.
Yeah.
And the poor poorer.
Yeah. And so much, the income is untaxed, or it's no escapes taxation. Yeah.
All right, not seeing any other questions now. I think we've got a couple minutes. But any other comments, questions for Dave, our speaker, Dr. Weber?
Oh, no, they.
Daniel, okay. We had too many Daves. I thought I better separate you so we know it. Well, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today and sharing these ideas. When I heard universal voting, you were speaking on that, I thought it meant allowing everyone to vote, but I had no idea what it stood for. So I appreciate you enlightening me, if not other people in here. So thank you very much, and appreciate it very much. Hope to have you back sometime. Everyone will remember to join us next week. Next week is Crystal Quaid, right, Pam?
Yes.
Okay. I thought this, I didn't write it down this time, but I thought that's who you said. I tried to write it down when you were saying that. And
Yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed that she isn't called away to vote.
If not, Pam will have a backup. No, anyway,
Not me.
just go through the announcements twice. All right. Well, thank you all for being here, especially our speaker, Dr. Weber. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Be back here, same bat time, same bat channel. We'll see you at noon next Friday. I'm going to take off now and head off to the Democratic office. Y'all have a great week.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Weber.